Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. I'm back today to talk about my anticipated releases for October 2025. Unlike September, we don't have quite so many releases for October, so we're not going to be doing it in two parts. We'll just be keeping it to the one video, which editing Charlotte, I'm sure, is very thankful for. And without much further ado, let's just get straight on into these books. Coming out on the 1st of October, we have Relearning to Read, Adventures in Not Knowing by Anne Morgan, with an introduction by Lucy Caldwell. You know me, I love a book about books, a book about the joys of reading, about libraries, anything remotely like that. Relearning to Read, Adventures in Not Knowing invites you to turn the way you read upside down and see what falls out. Drawing on an approach to reading developed over more than a decade of interactions with stories and book lovers around the world through the hit author's blog ayearofreadingtheworld.com, the book puts not knowing centre stage and plays with what examining the gaps in our understanding and the assumptions we use to plug them can teach us about ourselves and the world. Many books about books celebrate the coziness and consolation of reading. Relearning to Read does the opposite. Built on the realisation that to read widely, we must make friends with incomprehension, because no one can be an expert in all the world's literatures. It explores how getting comfortable with discomfort and owning our limitations can take us further and deepen our appreciation of the world's complexity and richness. I think a trap I can often fall down to is just sticking to what I know. I can get very comfortable in the genres, in the periods of history that I know best, and can feel quite uncomfortable about venturing to something new, because there is a safety there in what you know. And I think this book is a great reminder to embrace intellectual curiosity, and that there is so much joy that you can get out of being a beginner to something and learning something new. Then coming out on the 9th of October, we have The 200 Years' War, The Bloody Crowns of England and France, 1292 to 1492 by Dr. Michael Livingston. Now, I'm getting more and more comfortable with navigating the medieval period, particularly medieval England, but I would say 13th to 15th century England is probably where I'm a little bit shaky. So I always do appreciate a new book that can plug in those gaps. And also this feels like a really perfect follow-on from Two Houses, Two Kingdoms by Catherine Hanley, which was looking at the relationship between the kingdoms of France and England from 1100 to 1300. With this, we're just carrying on the story, a new and radically original account of the longest military conflict in European history, which challenges the conventional periodization of the 100 Years' War to consider a much longer period of Anglo-French conflict. Michael Livingston argues that the English lens through which the war has been viewed has led historians to define it in terms of English interests, most famously the claim of the Plantagenet King Edward III to be the rightful King of France, and that the events collectively labelled the 100 Years' War are best seen as a sequence of steps in France's struggle to define itself as a nation. For much of the period, France's primary rival was indeed England, but it was by no means the only combatant. Burgundy stood in its way too, as did Brittany, Flanders, Navarre, and other rival powers. Viewing France as the primary engine driving the war leads Livingston to consider a much longer time span, starting with the Anglo-French Pirate War of 1292, which swiftly escalated into a fight over England's feudal possessions in Gascony, and ending with the marriage of Charles VIII of France to Anne of Brittany, by which Brittany was subsumed into the French realm. Now, going to something that I am a little bit more comfortable with, and an author that I am very familiar with, we have A Guide to Regency Dress, from corsets and breeches to bonnets and muslins, coming out on the 14th of October and written by Hilary Davidson. I have previously read Dress in the Age of Jane Austen by Hilary Davidson and absolutely loved it. A really, really fantastic fashion history with so many images, illustrations, photos of surviving garments. And while this might be more of the same, I'm very much looking forward to it. Celebrated dress historian Hilary Davidson brings together nearly 20 years of research on Regency fashion in an illustrated guide for the first time. All the elements of the Regency wardrobe of both men and women, from coats, gowns and undergarments to shoes, accessories, beauty, hair and jewellery, are assembled along with their textiles and trimmings. A Guide to Regency Dress is an essential companion to navigate the world of Jane Austen or recreate the Regency look. Coming out on the 16th of October, we have a short story collection from the creators of The Haunting Season and The Winter Spirits, which are two short story collections that I have read before. We have The Witching Hour. I am slowly but surely dipping my toe into short stories, and this seems like the perfect seasonal read, featuring new and original stories from Michelle Paver, Stacey Halls, Bridget Collins, Imogen Hermes Gower, Kieran Millward Hargrave, Andrew Michael Hurley, Jess Kidd, Natasha Pulley, Elizabeth McNeil, Susan Stokes Chapman, Laura Shepherd Robinson, Stuart Turton and Katrina Ward. All big names in historical fiction. I'm very much looking forward to this one. There is something peculiar about the hour after midnight. It is the time when darkness reigns and strange things roam the earth. In this dazzling collection of original haunted tales, 13 best-selling and much-loved authors bring the old superstition of the witching hour to new and vivid life, transporting you through the smog of London to the freezing mists of Scarborough, from an Irish town riddled with rumour to a sinister English boarding school. These 13 stories will serve as your spine-tingling companion to the long hours of winter. So curl up, light a candle, and wait for the clock to strike. In a similar spooky vibe, but I think with a little bit more romance baked in, we have Good Spirits, coming out on the 21st of October. This is a new romance book in a new series by B.K. Borison. I've read Love Like Farms by B.K. Borison, and then earlier this year read First Time Caller, and it is one of my favourite books of the year. So I am very much looking forward to starting this new series, which has a little bit more of a spooky, supernatural twist to it. He's the ghost of Christmas past, but she is not exactly Scrooge. Nolan Callaghan intends to spend this holiday season exactly like every other, haunting the terrible people of Annapolis in his aimless existence as the ghost of Christmas past. Harriet York is a good person, or at least she tries to be. A people pleaser to her core, she always does what's expected of her. So when Nolan is assigned the sweeter than candy cane antique shop owner for his holiday haunting, neither of them has any idea why. To escape one another, Harriet and Nolan must unravel the threads that bind them together, all by Christmas Eve. Hand in hand, they uncover each other's pasts. But why is it that Nolan doesn't want to let go? And might Harriet be the key to giving the ghost of Christmas past a future? I quite enjoy this concept. It reminds me a little bit of The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. An ordinary girl falls in love with a ghost, but this time with a little bit more of a Christmas twist, so definitely on board for this. Switching back over to non-fiction history, coming out on the 21st of October, we have Mortimer's A to Z of English History by Ian Mortimer. Now you'll probably know the name Ian Mortimer as the author of the famous Time Traveller's Guide series, so Time Traveller's Guide to Medieval England, Time Traveller's Guide to Elizabethan England, and then Restoration Britain and Regency Britain, which are really fantastic guides taking you through these different historical settings. I think they're really valuable popular histories, which make these different time periods really accessible. In these sparkling A to Zs, time travelling historian Ian Mortimer visits 4 classic periods of English history: the 14th century, the Elizabethan age, the Restoration, and the Regency. As he goes from the Great Plague to the Great Freeze, from Armada to Austin, and from tobacco to toenails, he shines a light into corners of history we never knew were so fascinating, or so revealing of the whole. How did the button change life in the Middle Ages? If you found yourself at a smart Elizabethan party, should you kiss your hostess on the lips? Why were pistols safer than swords in a duel? And how come Regency Londoners quaffed so much port? This is Mortimer at his accessible and witty best. As ever, his aim is not only to bring the past to life, but also to illuminate our own times. I haven't read Ian Mortimer for quite a while, so this will be a welcome return. Going back to Christmas, coming out on October the 23rd, we have A Very British Christmas by Rob Temple. Rob Temple, who is known for running the Very British Problems social media accounts, and has written several Very British Problems books, and now we have a Christmas variant. A one-of-a-kind survival manual for everyone's least favourite aspect of the holiday season: having to spend it with your family. Christmas, as we all know, is a minefield. What the hell do you buy your mother-in-law? How to deal with the inevitable arguments provoked by a simple game of Monopoly? And where should you sit at the dining table to best avoid Grandad when he starts going off about politics? From navigating the awkwardness of marrying into a presents after dinner family, to the terrors of staying in someone else's house, especially when they have a weak flush. Very British Problems creator Rob Temple is here to ensure you'll be invited back next year. This just seems like really good fun, and I can imagine being a great Christmas gift for somebody. Another book that I can see it being a great Christmas gift, because this series of books is always so beautiful. You may have seen some other of Edward Brooke-Hitching's books, things like The Golden Atlas, The Sky Atlas, The Phantom Atlas, The Madman's Library, which are all really beautifully produced illustrated histories, and this time we have The Madman's Orchestra, a fascinating and beautifully illustrated journey through the entire history of music. In The Madman's Orchestra, join Edward Brooke-Hitching as he lifts the curtain on the strangest episodes from the entire history of music, taking us on a backstage tour of surprising and eccentric stories. From the musical secrets of prehistoric monuments to the future of compositions by artificial intelligence, The Madman's Orchestra uncovers the most curious tales, madcap musicians, and unusual instruments lost in time, and answers questions including: what does the song of a black hole sound like? Which composition requires 4 helicopters and a string quartet with strong stomachs to play it correctly? How exactly would the cat piano sound? And would it be any more pleasing to the ear than the hog harmonium? Discover music hoaxes, compositions relayed by ghosts, the code writing of musical cryptography, pop songs smuggled past Soviet censors using X-rays, the beauty of Renaissance eye music, compositions by the devil, the supernatural instruments played by witches, and the experimental female scientist who created the visible voice. Fascinating, funny, and at times barely believable, the Madman's Orchestra is a unique exploration of the history of music that will strike a chord with fans of beautiful books and bizarre history, and delight with a rich depth and variety of research that ultimately celebrates the boundless creativity of our musical imagination. And then the final book for October, coming out on the 28th, is Anne of Avenue A by Audrey Bellezza and Emily Harding. This is the third book in the For Love of Austen series, which is a modern reimagining of different Jane Austen books. You may have seen Emma of 83rd Street, which, as you can imagine, was an Emma Woodhouse modern adaptation, or Elizabeth of East Hampton, which similarly takes the story of Pride and Prejudice, but through a modern New York lens. And in this, we are adapting Persuasion. Jane Austen's Persuasion meets the Big Apple in this swoon-worthy holiday romance from the authors of the charming Elizabeth of East Hampton and Emma of 83rd Street. I actually haven't read these other two, so I'm definitely going to have to read them first, but I'm very intrigued by this one. 8 years ago, Anne Elliot broke Freddie Wentworth's heart when she refused to give up her 5-year plan for the sake of adventure. But despite big dreams, Anne, now 30, is still living at home with hardly a plan in sight. Anne tries to be optimistic. She knows better than anyone that regret will get you nowhere. But that goes out of the window when, thanks to her father's bad spending habits, her childhood apartment is rented out to the very man still living in her head rent-free. Freddie Wentworth never thought he'd see Anne Elliot again after she dumped him for accepting a job overseas. He spent years trying to forget her, and he's been mostly successful. So when a job opportunity takes him back to New York, he's shocked to find out that Anne is not only his new neighbour, but also the former resident of his new Greenwich Village penthouse. Nearly a decade after Anne and Freddie's fateful romance, the only thing they still have in common is a desire to leave their relationship firmly in the past. But between a disastrous off-Broadway show and a drunken Thanksgiving dinner, nosy neighbours and flirtatious friends, Anne and Freddie suddenly find their lives more intertwined than ever before. When old feelings start rising to the surface, they must decide whether to put their hearts on the line or walk away all over again. I think what's really interesting about this series, and what I'm keen to explore, is it does seem like a lot of Austen is still left intact in terms of the storyline. It's just seeing how it is filtered through a modern lens, and particularly a new setting of New York. That's what I'm really keen to interrogate and learn more about. So there we go, those are all of the books coming out in October that I have had my eye on. Do let me know if you are interested in picking up any of the books I've spoken about today. Alternatively, please let me know about anything coming up in October that I haven't mentioned and that you're really excited for. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.